Get out the insurance cards, get out the copays. The office is open, my friends. Brought to you by drroto.com.
Is up and welcome in to a brand new show. We like to call this thing Clean Air. We are your quick pit of DFS NASCAR information. My name is Eric Romoff. You can catch me on those Twitter streets at FantasyNav, and our pit chief, our pit boss for the night, none other than Mr. Mike Holland. Mike, how's it going tonight?
Yo, what's up? It's good to be back, man. Talking some NASCAR this time as college basketball came to an end. But yeah, it was a good night. Truck Series race tonight. Had a nice little sweat, was in first place with about 20 laps to go. But of course, the big wreck happened. But still ended up finishing fourth in the $33 and made about $300 tonight. So yeah, super excited about the rest of the year here as we cruise into baseball season and NASCAR, some golf. But obviously our focus here is going to be trying to figure out how to put some green screens on the board for some driving around.
That is exactly what we're trying to do here. Much like we've done with everything here with Green Screen Media, we're really trying to get kind of the essential information out there in a quick format. And much like it was for CBB, this is going to be a bit of a learning experience, at least for yours truly. Our guy here, Mike, is very much so experienced and capable in the DFS NASCAR streets. And I am anything but. I'm entering as a novice. So not only is Mike going to break down each individual race as we head into the weekends, but he's also going to go through some of the blocking and tackling, kind of the strategy stuff. So with that, Mike, why don't you educate us a little bit? What do I need to know about playing DFS NASCAR? How do I go about being successful? What are some common strategies or approaches that you see players like to deploy?
Yeah, so I think if it's your first time playing DFS NASCAR, it's definitely a lot different than some of the other sports. You can climb up and down the standings. You can go from first to dead last pretty quickly. So there's a lot of moving parts here. I think the most common thing is just obviously determining like the type of track that you're at. The drivers, obviously you need to know them, the manufacturers, what drivers are better at certain track types. Then obviously pricing is involved. You go through like your typical DFS type strategies. No different than most sports where you typically will take two approaches, right? You'll take a stars and scrubs build approach, and you'll take, a more balanced approach, and maybe kind of mix it up where you kind of get a little bit of both there. So not quite as different on the roster construction portion, but it's really just knowing the track type is really huge. We're going to talk about, it's funny, we're doing our first show and it's going to be a short track and it's going to be covered in dirt for only the second time in the history of NASCAR. So epic first show to start on. So yeah, I think just overall here, we'll talk about some of the guys, some of the teams, and really just kind of get a sense of how to kind of build out a roster here, who we like, who we want to fade, who we might want to take some gambling chances on here. So definitely excited to talk about it.
So you mentioned stars and scrubs, and at least for me in NASCAR, it feels like that has a bit of a different connotation than any other time I've heard that phrase referenced. So specifically in the NASCAR world, what is a star? What is a scrub? How does pairing them together kind of correlate or ultimately lead to a successful build?
Yeah, so really the stars are going to be kind of the guys that obviously are typically going to challenge for the win. They're going to lead laps. These are guys that, drive the top equipment. Now this year it's a little bit different because they have the new next-gen cars out. It seems like the difference between, some of the teams here, the gap is kind of closed between some of the middle tier teams and some of the top teams like Hendrick Motorsports, Joe Gibbs Racing. I mean, you're starting to see teams like Trackhouse Racing, and some of these other teams, really kind of challenge for more top tens and even lead laps here in the first 10 races. So when you look at the scrubs, I mean, unfortunately, there's still some funding differences between the very top, the middle, and then the bottom. The bottom here, you've got your classic back marker guys. These are guys that just really become almost like your, kind of your passing cars at the end. They're just out there, kind of clearing it through. You can get some races where these guys can kind of move up from their position that they're in just based off of wrecks, but these aren't really, guys like, Cody Ware down here. You'll see like, traditional, untraditional guys like Corey LaJoie who aren't in the best equipment are going to have a little bit harder time advancing unless they're on like a super speedway, which pretty much anybody can win at that track type. So I think you just really have to look at really the top and the middle. Who's in that lower middle tier that you're willing to take some shots on that has a chance to really pick up some position differential spots. And we got an interesting pole position guy today, which we'll talk about. But I think overall, you're just looking at really that top tier and then building out through the bottom of that middle tier, which is kind of what we call still a scrub.
Gotcha. So we'll talk about a lot of these guys, but generally speaking, as I scroll through the pricing here on DraftKings, most of the top 5, 10, 15 most expensive guys are expected to have a reasonable chance to win, or is it not as simple as that? How does that sort of price correlate to the projected outcome for that particular driver?
Yeah, so you look at it here, you've got 5 guys priced in the 9K range, you've got 4 guys priced in that 10K range, and you've got Kyle Larson up here at the top at 11.2. So quite a few options when your average salary is only $83.33 per driver. So typically when you're building stars, you'll typically get 3 guys up here at the top. As far as a correlation on that, obviously you want to look at teams, right? You look at Hendrick Motorsports; they had a really good season last year. They have the defending reigning series driver here in Kyle Larson. They also feature Chase Elliott, William Byron. I mean, look at these guys. These guys are dropping massive fantasy points. Alex Bowman is also on that team. So they're one of the top teams out there. And you look at Joe Gibbs Racing, a lot of the Toyota guys, you'll notice the names like Kyle Busch, one of the best drivers of all time. You got Martin Truex on that team. So, just a lot of talent on the top tier teams. As far as, how you kind of put these guys together, it just really depends on track type. Obviously, it's going to depend on whether or not there's value that you can play. There's going to be some weeks where you can't jam in 3 of these guys, and you're going to need to play some of those guys in that 7K, 8K range just to fit maybe 1 or 2 studs up at the top. So, like I said, it's going to go race by race based on qualifying times. If guys have issues, if they're going to a backup car, I mean, there's just so many different things you got to kind of pay attention to, which is why we're doing this show, is to kind of, give you a quick breakdown, 25, maybe 30 minutes here, just, who we're looking at, so that way you can kind of get set up for the races.
So with it being sort of a race by race kind of game, let's jump right into this race tomorrow night, a little bit after 7:00 Eastern. We've got a Cup Series race. It is the Food City Dirt Race there at the Bristol Motor Speedway. You mentioned off the top, it is temporarily moved to dirt. Why don't you tell us a little bit about this race itself and maybe who Vegas likes to come away with the win?
Yeah, so this is a half-mile track here. 250 laps are going to be run here, so it's a total of 125 and a half miles. So NASCAR is broken down into stages here. So you're going to have stage 1 is going to be 75 laps. Stage 2 is going to be 75 laps, and you have 100 laps to end it here. Racing on dirt, it's different. It's something that NASCAR is bringing in, especially with Easter weekend. They're trying to get eyes on the sport. It's going to be something different that people really haven't seen. They did it last year. There was rain and some issues last year that really prevented the full experience of this. But I think this year it's going to be a lot of fun. We just watched the Truck Series race. And a lot going on, a lot of slipping and sliding, just a really fun race to watch. We're not typically used to watching these guys on this type of surface. So, with the weather being good out there now, we're just, looking for a really fun race here. As far as Vegas, I mean, Kyle Larson here, he's the most expensive driver. He's starting in position 5. He's plus 550 in Vegas right now. So a strong contender to win here. You look at the next 2 guys here, Christopher Bell in a Toyota here, he's plus 800, and you got Joey Logano in a Ford here, he's plus 900. So you've got a Chevy, a Ford, and a Toyota here in the top 3, which is not very typical. You'll typically see one manufacturer really jump out Typically the Chevys or the Toyotas kind of leading the pack. But yeah, like I said, depending on the race, things can kind of change here. The thing that really separates here and what I noticed about the odds is these guys right here are short track specialists. Kyle Larson being a dirt track guy, plenty of history there. Man, he's been so good last year. He dominated. He's taken a little bit of time to kind of get used to this new car they're driving. But at the, that P5 position and his price, he's going to have to get to the front of the field here to lead laps. And, once you get out in front of the short track, it's really hard to pass. So that's going to be the big thing people notice is passing is going to be an issue here. So the guys in the top 10 really just run a clean race here and just stay out of trouble are going to score some fantasy points here. And then, obviously the DK scoring is, place differentials a point. So if you're starting P10, you move up to 8th, you're going to grab 2 fantasy points there, along with, the finish there is worth an incremental amount. Obviously it goes down based off of the position that you finish. Huge bonuses here for laps led and then fastest laps. So who's getting around the track fast? When you first start the race, typically the laps led and the fastest laps will be the same person. Obviously the guy up front in that clean air. So, on a short track, what it really differs from these 1.5 mile tracks and these super speedways is that the guys starting in the back, since it's only half a mile long, they've got a worse chance of, staying on that lead lap here. And so once you go down a lap, it's pretty tough to get back a lap. So that's something to pay attention to because you got some pretty big names down here, starting at the end, and they get into some trouble early if they're not able to stay on that lead lap. So that's something we'll pay attention to and maybe some gambles in that particular section there. But just looking at Vegas, they love the guys that, Joey Logano won here last year on the dirt race in Bristol. So looking at Larson, Bell, Logano, and Elliott kind of round out the top 4 here for Vegas.
So with that, we've now said a few times over that it really is about, a track to track decision. Sounds like Vegas is following a similar line, right? The guys that are, as you put it, short track specialists are the ones that are favored to win. What else can we maybe look at specific to this race that we can use as an indicator for success this weekend?
Yeah, so you look at like practice times. Obviously, there's qualifying. You got to be careful with that because guys are typically working on their car, trying to find different grooves of the racetrack here. So, you have to be very careful with, just basing it off of qualifying times. You look at our pole sitter here in first pole of his Cup Series career here, Colt Custer. I mean, he's 5,900. Kind of an interesting qualifying race they have. It's not traditional. What happened was he started in 8th position, in 9th position in his heat, finished 2nd, but because he passed 7 cars, he got 7 bonus points. So hence the weird scoring this week. He is now on the pole. He's 5,900. I mean, man, I don't know how long he's going to be able to lead laps for. Just because you look great in qualifying doesn't necessarily mean you're an automatic lock here. If he could somehow stay in front and win stage 1, though, with all these bonus points at 5,900, he doesn't even have to finish in the top 10 really to pay off at that salary. When you're talking about salary, you're looking at 5x, 6x for tournaments. So, finishing at 30 fantasy points for him, if half of those points are coming from lead and fast laps to start the first 30, 40 laps of the race, then he becomes an interesting target. I just don't know because there's so many good cars right behind him.
You mentioned a minute ago that Joey Logano won here last year. It was also on dirt. Anything specific to track history here at Bristol that we should maybe take a closer look at?
So I mean, Bristol, it's going to be a little bit different, right? Bristol is on dirt right now, but if you look at Bristol as just a track in general, Kyle Busch, he's got 8 wins. For the active leaders, Kurt Busch has 6 wins. So the 2 brothers there, obviously they've been around for a long time, so they're able to rack up a lot of starts here, but obviously great drivers. Kevin Harvick and Brad Keselowski both have 3 wins each. And then obviously, as we said earlier, Joey Logano is the only one that we have from last year that has actual history at Bristol on dirt. Ran a really good race last year. So, he's definitely going to be someone that's on a lot of people's radars tomorrow.
So diving into this slate a little bit further, we largely break it down into dominators and to position differential guys. One more time, maybe kind of explain exactly what a dominator play is, and then maybe break down the guys that you think fit that mold for tomorrow.
Yeah, so a dominator play is someone that can get out in front. They can lead laps, rack up what we call dominator points, which are, fastest laps and lead laps. That obviously raises your floor and obviously increases your ceiling. You'll see some races where guys will get up into the 150s, putting up crazy points, and they don't even finish first. So definitely you want these guys up front. For a short track, you typically want 2 to 3 of these guys because due to pitch strategies and different things like that, they're going to be different race leaders. We've seen the last couple of weeks here that on the short track, you're going to want the first position, but this is the first time in like at least the last 2-3 years that I've been playing NASCAR DFS that someone is 5,900 on the pole. That almost never happens unless you have like an inverted field, which they were doing during COVID. But just looking at this, it's kind of crazy. I mean, Cole Custer, we'll just go right back to it, right? I mean, his average starting position right now, 17th, and his average finish is 20th this year. He's in 0 top 10s during the regular season. It's just really tough to play him. You're going to have some shares of him if you're playing multiple lineups because, like I said, if he does lead a majority or all of stage 1, he doesn't have to do that much. But the downside is that, if we're racking up all these points, if he wrecks out or, finishes in the 20s, he's going to automatically have -20 in position place differentials. So that's going to kind of knock out all those points that he was accruing. So he needs to still finish a pretty solid finish here if he's going to lead most of stage 1, if not all of stage 1. If he leads all of stage 1, I mean, he's going to rack up a ton of points there, and he could get away with finishing in the teens. But definitely someone that you want to look at here. More traditional dominator plays. You got Kyle Larson. Obviously, we talked about it, reigning Cup Series champion, just really good on dirt, just super fast, man. So that price, I hope it scares some people away, but a lot of people are used to just going straight to him to start, especially with some of the salaries this week. You can kind of get into some of these guys without taking too much risk. Chris Bell, great short track driver. He's 10-8. Position 2. If he gets ahead of Cole Custer, off the restart or off the start of the race, and then can take over 5-10 laps into the race and lead all of stage 1, he's going to be an awesome play at 10-8 as long as he can finish in the top 10, which obviously Vegas likes him. It's the second best odds to win the race, so a really good chance for a top 5 there. You look at Logano, he won last year. You're getting a $200 discount off of Bell, but he gives you a little more place differential play. The problem with Logano is that he's going to have to work his way up to first, so he's probably not going to get up to first place by the end of stage 1. You're probably going to need him to get into first by, in that middle of stage 2. And if he gets the lead, he'll start racking up some of those dominator points. You look at Chase Elliott, was so good a couple of years ago, the series champ here. He's kind of like I know Vegas likes him, but I don't know in the DFS world if he's going to be that popular. He raced in the Truck Series race today, started 7th, finished 7th. Wasn't all that impressive. He's just been kind of okay this year for what we expect him to be. So he's super interesting. And you look at someone like Tyler Reddick, just super, a lot of speed this year, great long run speed. He's 9,200. If he's someone that can get up front early at 9,200, you're getting a dominator at a pretty good discount compared to some of these other guys. And you can never discount Kyle Busch. The guy's just an animal. He's had some issues recently, starting 11th, so you get some position differential from a dominator there. He's just always in play for us.
So circling back to our guy Cole Custer, right? Pole position sitter, less than $6,000. First question, what do you think a reasonable ownership number looks like for him? And then to follow that up, where does he need to finish in order to make him a viable play for tomorrow?
Yeah, so let's just, if you're looking at it, there's 2 worlds that we live in, right? It's like if he gets out in front and he leads, let's say 50 laps or so, obviously that's, you're going to get accrued 20 to 30 fantasy points just in that way. So now it's all about where can he finish, right? If he finishes in the top 10, you're only going to lose nine points there, right? So you can kind of live with that, with where he's going to, obviously, rack up 30 more fantasy points there. You want that, right? Because he's still going to finish a 7, 8, 9 X, depending on where he finishes in the, if he's around 9, 10, or 11. He starts dropping down those low teens, though, and he's leading laps. He's going to be okay. He might hit 5X. But the problem here is if he doesn't lead laps and someone like Chris Bell jumps in front of him or Kyle Larson runs him down 20 laps in, and now he's not leading laps, and it becomes an issue at 5,900. He's got to stay in the top 5, top 10 if he's not leading laps to even have a chance to pay off that salary. But you look at his 0 top 10s so far in the regular season. So, with guys that regularly play here, he's not going to be that popular. There's going to be some ownership though, just in case that first theory, if I had to pin it down, I would probably look at him between anywhere from like 12 to 18% if I had to guess. And that might be a little bit on the high side because he's somebody that could legitimately just kind of get burnt off the start here and just really not be in position to do anything all race. But he leverage, right? If he hits those 50 laps or so and he's out in front just racing a clean race and just has a good day. I mean, that's a super small price tag to get someone that dominates a race.
So with that being kind of the high end of his range, right? Leads 50 laps. If he gets there, if he's got 50 laps led when it's all said and done, is his likelihood to finish top 10, top 12 really strong? Or is there a world where, for a fifth of the race he's leading and then all of a sudden he still ends up, 15th, 20th, 25th when the day's over?
Yeah, I mean, he's got to be clean, right? So no mistakes on, just in general. Man, I just don't see a world where I'm watching tomorrow and he is, someone that's contending for a top 10. We just haven't seen it, right? But it is a short track, so these laps, they click off really fast. It's not like your traditional like Coke 600 or your Daytonas where you're 3 hours in and you're like, well, dang man, we're 3/4 of the way through the race. This thing's already been over for an hour. So I don't know. I'm gonna obviously probably put my exposure to about 5 or 10% on him, and I'm really looking to get in guys more like Chris Bell to lead early, someone like a Kyle Larson or my guys to kind of take over. Right behind that, I'm looking at someone like Joey Logano. To eventually, get to the front and potentially lead the entire race.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Moving on to a new or kind of a middle group of guys, small handful of dudes that still very much so have a win potential on their range of outcomes, but are starting a little bit further back. Maybe walk us through these guys where they offer some position differential, but they can also potentially sneak away with the win.
Yeah, so you got to go to Elliott Larson's teammate here, William Byron. Made some money off of him playing him this year. Just jamming him in each and every week. The price tag's there. It's $10K. I don't really care. He's starting 19th. He's tied with Blaney on his driver real rating at 0.88. That just means he's been super solid all year. For me, it's just really going to be hard for him to kind of fail here. It would really take something like maybe an engine failure or an accident because he's got top 5, top 10 potential here. So if you're telling me, hey, I'm giving you William Byron at 8th at the end, you're already grabbing 11 points there for points differential, and then getting a top 8 for standings. I mean, he's already creeping up to that 4X spot. And he's actually got a chance to actually win this race. So it's definitely someone that I'm looking at really hard tomorrow. I'm liking a lot of my pairings where I put someone like Larson and Byron together from Hendrick Motorsports here. Martin Truex, man, I don't know what was going on. He was really slow in practice. Just like position 30, right? 9,600. When you start getting into these P30s, these are the guys that they can move forward. But man, if they're having some issues, kind of getting going early, they could go a lap down. So that's kind of scary. But he's got top 15 upside at 9,600. Man, if I'm looking between Truex and Byron, though, I just feel better because I feel like Byron has a better chance to win the race, actually grab some Dominator points, late and potentially win the race. Whereas Truex just hasn't really shown us much in practice right now. So, you look at guys like Blaney, he's been really good this year. He's 9,400, gives you some position differential without, the fear of maybe falling behind, a lap down real early at position 25. You got Denny Hamlin. He's been really good. position 34. He's got top 15, really top 10 upside at 8,700. So he's someone that I really like. And then Ross Chastain, man, this guy's been awesome. I got to see him firsthand spin AJ Allmendinger out to win the COTA race right in front of me. So that was pretty awesome. He's got 6 top 10s. He's been top 5 in 5 of the last 6 races, which most of those have been short tracks. So he's definitely an appealing option as well.
So looking at this lot, right, we got 5 guys here, with William Byron being the exception. They're all kind of lumped together from a pricing standpoint, right? Kind of mid-8s to mid-9s. Can they get you the return you need on just place differential, or are they going to need to actually get out front and stack up at least some of those Dominator points to pay off that price tag?
Yeah, so if Byron gets into the top 5, he'll have enough to pay that salary off. Truex and Hamlin are going to have to get into the top 15. You look at Blaney, he has a potential to win the race late too. He's got to get into the top, finish maybe 5th through 8th to really pay that 9,400 off. And then Chastain, just because he has a little bit more of a discount than some of these other guys, has a little more wiggle room. If he slats up 23 spots and gets a top 10, that's 23 place differential points plus his standings points here. He's going to easily crush. So he's definitely someone that I'm looking at. But if I had to look at all these guys, man, just William Byron could legit in stage 2, kind of like a Logano, get up front and lead a lot of these laps in stage 2 and 3 and come up with a victory. So he's someone that I'm really looking at.
So going back to Chastain, and correct me where I'm probably wrong, he sounds like a perfect cash play for tomorrow. Is that oversimplification, or am I reading that the right way?
No, he's definitely a good cash play tomorrow. I think the problem with this is that you look at him, Hamlin, and Truex, right? They got to get going early and fast because those lead Custer and all those guys up front, they're going to be charging really quickly and looking to put guys a lap down. We saw this last week where, guys like Hamlin were struggling to stay on the lead lap, and it was a battle down in Martinsville. So, yeah, that's the only fear that I have is that you have huge upside with these guys that are starting in the 30s, but man, they get trapped a lap down. They could obviously get that lap back, but it just takes a little more luck and different things to kind of happen to get your lap back. And there's some runs where the runs go really long, man. You just start taking off all these, you get back on the lead lap, and then it takes you a while to pass even more people to even, say someone like Hamlin goes down, where Chastain goes down a lap early. They don't get that lap back till late in stage 2. Now you got 120 laps, and you're going to need to pass 15, 16 people. People drive harder in stage 3. There's more opportunity for wrecks. So there's some risk factor with some of these guys starting in the 30s on a short track, so especially one that has dirt.
So another group of names that are largely starting towards the back of the pack, the true blue position differential guys. Maybe run us through some of the plays to start that you like there, and we can round out with a couple of guys where we can maybe get a little bit different from the rest of the field.
Yeah, so you look at Harvick, he's position 32. He's 8,100. I don't think he really has a chance to win this race. It's been solid at this track. He's had an okay year. I don't know. For me, it's like I'd rather spend the money up for Hamlin and Chastain or Blaney, guys like that could potentially win the race, really, really break the slate, versus playing someone like Harvick, and then I'm just kind of stuck in the mid-tier. It's almost like a waste of money, because what happens is you play someone like him, but you go down one position ahead of him is Eric Almirola, who's been racing really well recently. He grew up on dirt tracks. He's been really good. It's going to be interesting to see what his ownership comes down to. He's 6,800. I'd rather take the $1,300 savings for someone that could finish in the top 10, just like Harvick could. So I think Harvick is more of a, I don't know, it feels like a contrarian play, because you're kind of giving up one of these options to pay down. You look at someone like Harrison Burton, Noah Gragson. I think Gragson is going to be popular after what he did in practice. He was top 5 in short and long run speeds, regardless if it's a restart or if it just runs long with no cautions. He looks like a solid option. He's racing with that College racing car that AJ Allmendinger is typically in. He's starting position 28, a lot of upside there to get into the top 20, and at 5,300, that's gonna pay off easily. Burton's more of a pivot off of him. He's a little more expensive and obviously starts a little further ahead. Gilliland's another guy. I just don't like playing him. I don't know, for whatever reason. He's just not my guy, but he's also another decent option. But I think overall, I'm really looking at Eric Almirola here, someone that really piques my interest at that price point and what he could do for a position differential.
And to your point with the last group of guys, right? He still carries some of that same risk starting, there in P30 plus, that he could fall off of that lead lap, but you're at least getting someone who knows the surface well and is $2,000 plus less expensive than those position differential plus Dominator guys that we talked about a minute ago. So definitely like the Almirola call there. As we round out these position differential guys, who do you like out of this lot as a way to get different, or maybe as some salary relief?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens with Chase Briscoe, right? He's 9,800, starting P4. I mean, he's got a potential chance to dominate the race, but I mean, not a lot of people are going to go there since he's seeing the guys that he's around that, a little bit better on this track, as well as, guys that are expected to challenge for the win here. I'll have a few sprinkles of them because there's always that 5% Dominators that seems to get out in front. You're like, oh, there it is. Austin Dillon, Eric Jones, Austin Cindric, Kurt Busch are all in that 6,900 to 7,400 range. It feels like stars and scrubs when you have guys like Gregson and Almirola that you can just plug and play, and then you can go up and get 3 or 4 guys up near the top. So it just feels like these guys naturally, as we talk about in every sport, their ownership's going to be depressed here. I think of these guys, like Austin Dillon's pretty interesting. He raced in the Truck Series tonight. He was okay. I think he ended up finishing 14th. He's starting 12th. I mean, if he finishes 12th or 10th, I mean, yeah, it's good enough for 7,400. Eric Jones has been really good. The next gen car has been really good for him since he was downgraded out of Christopher Bell's new whip into Bubba Wallace's old whip. And it seems like the change in the next gen car has made him a lot stronger. He's always been a strong driver, but now his equipment is back boosted up closer to the, some of the top tier equipment that's out there. For me, Kurt Busch is interesting, right? A lot of wins here, 6,900, P13. I mean, he was sneaky last week. I missed out on him. And then Austin Cindric, I mean, that position 20, 7,100. I mean, the guy's just an animal. He's an up-and-coming star. Probably going to have too much of him, honestly, at 7,100. Just has a lot of upside here. So he's definitely someone that I'm looking into. But, if you look at options like, you're paying for Kurt Busch, Eric Almirola, and Noah Gregson, you're going to be able to go up and get 3 Dominators. I think that's going to be more of a, what stars and scrubs type build you're looking at. Whereas guys like Austin Dillon, Eric Jones, maybe even Austin Cindric, even though there's only 200 more than Kurt Busch, those guys become, a little less owned there. So it's definitely interesting to maybe play 2 or 3 options up at the top and squeeze one of those guys in with 2 of the guys at the bottom.
So that largely covers the field that we have here in the player pool. Maybe to transition to this last segment. Curious to get your thoughts on how you put all these guys together. Do you have a certain number of Dominators you're looking for? Do you typically plant your flag on a guy to dominate and then really look for P differential guys to, for the other 5 spots? How does the sausage get made across these different kind of categories of players?
Yeah, so I usually play 13 lineups. I usually played 10 in like the little $5 1K to first. I usually play 3 in the $33 to what is it? I think it's either 1 or 2K to first. So, if I'm looking at single entry, it's going to be really tough to get away from like a Kyle Larson, William Byron kind of start point, and then using the guys at the bottom like a kind of, we talked about Gregson and Almirola to kind of start your lineups. I really like to identify the punts that kind of like what we do in college basketball, right? We identify where the value is, use those guys, and kind of mix it up, with the guys at the top, and then try to get contrarian on a few of these lineups as well. If you look at the lineup that I had today, the contrarian one that I made in the $33 of the 3 lineups I made was actually almost chipped the thing. So it doesn't always work out the way you want it. There's wrecks, there's different things, there's engine issues. And Kyle Larson had an issue before a race was a few years ago where they forgot to remove something off the motor and it overheated before the race even started. So there's all kinds of crazy stuff that can happen, right? But I think for me, it's like identifying the guys that are really good here, pitting those guys together, using teammates together is another good strategy. Finding who those place differential guys are, and then like you always like to do in college basketball, find the leverage plays off of those guys, right? So whereas people are jamming in Noah Gregson, you slide up $600, get you a Harrison Burton who, if he gets you a 14 and Noah Gregson wrecks out and finishes 34th, and there's a 40% difference between them, that's where you can get different. You put in someone like Briscoe and, the leaders are racing hard towards the end. They wreck each other out, and all of a sudden Briscoe's leading the last 40 laps of the race. It's just getting different, like we do in every sport.
Makes a lot of sense. Let's round it out with my first question. I always ask you, who are we locking in for this race tomorrow?
Yeah, I think for me, I have to lock in Larson and Byron from Hendrick Motorsports. Larson's just been so good. I feel like he's gonna run down the leaders, has a chance to potentially finish in the lead after stage one, and then we've seen him just dominate races. So looking at William Byron too, just looking at his price versus his position differential and his ability to lead laps and get fast laps and win the race, just like that combination there. And Eric Almirola, man, just been pretty solid here. As long as he can kind of stay out of trouble and kind of just move forward like he's been doing. Had a really good race last week. At that price tag, man, for someone that could, sneak a top 15, potentially get into the top 10 if things go right, he's someone that I'm looking to lock in as well.
Yeah, especially with those first two guys that you mentioned, right? You got better than 21K of salary locked up in Byron and Larson. So going down to a very affordable Almirola at sub 7K makes a lot of sense. On the other side of this coin, let's get faded. Who are you avoiding like the plague tomorrow?
Yeah, man, I hate to say it on our first stream, but Alex Bowman, I've been jamming this guy in for feels like the last 4 weeks as the one Hendrick driver that I like to play that can really make some noise here. I just don't know how I feel about him on this race. Finished 12th last week after starting 15th. I just don't know that he's going to get ahead of Larson and, being able to hold off guys like Kyle Busch and Logano who are right behind him. If this were maybe a mile and a half or even, a super speedway, I'd like him a little bit better. His price tag, I mean, it's $8,900. That's okay. But, man, when you look at the value on this race, I just don't know that there's a spot for him. I'll probably maybe take a shot, but I'm really looking to just fade him completely. Ty Dillon is another one. Man, it's been awesome. Him, like Eric Jones, like he's been able to, work the new equipment to his advantage here. But he's starting P7. So at 6,200, like he's always been someone we play at 6K or less, right? Because he's starting 30 in the 30s. I don't like this when you're starting 7th and probably going to finish in the 20s. So complete fade there. It's just not worth the risk. Those are the two guys I'm probably not going to have any exposure to.
And speaking of risk, my favorite question of this entire process, we need to roll those dice. We need to blow on our hands before we toss them out there. Who's our gamble for tomorrow?
Man, our gamble is going to be Brad Keselowski, now part owner of Roush Fenway Keselowski Racing. So it seems like his focus is a little bit elsewhere after leaving Team Penske here. I mean, 7,900. I mean, he's had some great finishes here. He's been finishing average finish of 15. So, not bad here. You add in the track type and kind of where he's starting price point. He's kind of a sneakier play. Don't mind gambling. He could surprise and pick up a top 5 or maybe even challenge for a win if things go well and there's some wrecks. His floor is definitely nice here. So don't mind Brad Keselowski as a gamble.
Keselowski, I mean, he's found that winner's circle here 3 times before. Definitely offers some salary relief on what feels to be a pretty expensive slate. So a lot of things to like about rolling the dice with old Brad. Any closing thoughts before we button this up?
I think Hendrick mixing those guys in, guys like Larson, Byron, Elliott, definitely the plays I'm looking at, and then just mixing up your value plays down here because there's a lot of salary relief. And then tossing in a contrarian play. It seems like every week there is a sub, let's say 5 to 8% guy that kind of gets overlooked either at the top, someone like a Briscoe, in the middle, someone like maybe an Eric Jones, and then towards the bottom, someone like maybe Gilliland's going to be a little more popular than what I think. But one of those guys like a Harrison Burden at the bottom, one of those guys that feels like could potentially be the difference between more of the chalk busting versus obviously if you're playing in a large field, you want to figure out a way to be different.
So if you're watching out there on YouTube, go ahead, get over there, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and just like Mike advised, drop into the chat a contrarian play, a non-popular option that you think might actually come out and ship this thing tomorrow, and let's get this bread.
Thanks for stopping by the office. Get your fantasy prescription by subscribing to the channel and checking out drroto.com. And until the next visit, be well and take care.